We've had a great, fun week, and let's kind of cap it off with some, I guess, some trade talk here. Because, look, the free agent pitching market, as Rec and I have discussed, it doesn't seem to be as sexy in terms of big-time name value as maybe the trade market would have to offer. So I'm going to throw you three names. We've kicked them all around before. Give us the very latest on whatever trade talks might exist, for starting with Dylan Cease.
Dylan Cease. I'll say this team first and foremost, the Baltimore Orioles. And I'll mention them a little bit later on as we get through these possibilities, because when you look at the Orioles, how good they were in 2023, how close they are to potentially being a World Series team, they still need pitching. And so if they're not going to go out and spend big for someone like Snell or Montgomery, then trading for a pitcher is almost essential. And Cease, when you think about the White Sox need the kind of position player reboot that the Orioles can facilitate because of all the amazing young talent that they have accumulated over time. So I mentioned Baltimore first with Cease, but two more teams that I've heard have been involved at varying degrees in the last several weeks. The Yankees, for all the same reasons that we talked about earlier about Yamamoto and their interest in him, they still need someone to be the co-pilot with Garrett Cole at the top of the rotation. So the Yankees do have interest in Dylan Cease. And one more team that's somewhat surprising for Dylan Cease, and that's the Mariners. We talked about them a bit earlier in the week, and I want to expand upon the reason why. The Mariners, they're trying to add bats, but do so on a budget. And what they have, the currency they have right now is young pitching. And they could potentially move someone like Brian Wu or Bryce Miller, but only if they have the pitching support to fill in behind. And that's where Dylan Cease, with 2 years of control, becomes really appealing for the Mariners. You'd feel much more comfortable if you're Justin Hollander giving up someone who you have 5 or 6 years of control on, like Miller or Wu, if you're getting back a pitcher like Cease who has still 2 years, and then maybe you could move a Miller or Wu for someone like a Jonathan India or one of the bats in Minnesota like a Max Kepler. Those types of moves become much more realistic if you have Cease already in place.
Jerry Dipoto, never afraid. We'll see if Seattle gets involved in this sweepstakes or not. What about the Corbin Burnes sweepstakes? And he is one of the following two pitchers with a recent Cy Young Award on his mantle. We'll talk about Shane Bieber in a moment. Let's talk first about Burnes.
Corbin Burnes, to me, is someone that the chances for a trade with him, Matt, at this moment are a little bit lower than I thought they would be. I really believe that once Brandon Woodruff was non-tender, that it was almost automatic that Burnes would be moved. Because you think about the Brewers, smaller market, they're so dependent upon being able to, at the right times, trade their key guys and get prospects back to help replenish. And I thought that with Woodruff leaving for no value because he was non-tendered, that Burnes would definitely be moved. And I still think there's a decent chance he'll be traded, whether it's now or at the trade deadline, but it's not imminent. And yet the one team that I'll mention here, I talked about them in the previous segment with free agents, is the San Francisco Giants. And while Burnes only has that 1 year left of control, he is from Northern California. So if you're the Giants, they've had a hard time bringing in free agents in recent years. Perhaps if you find a way to bring in Burnes right now and then maybe have him extended at the same time, that's a conversation that someone who's from the area, comfortable there, of course, might be ready to have. So again, Burnes to the Giants, especially if the Giants can't find the right free agent fit. I think that trade, and the Giants farm system is better and can furnish that kind of a deal. I think Burnes to the Giants is one strong possibility to watch in the weeks ahead.
What type of return, so are the Brewers, do you think, in this situation, say they do go ahead and trade a Corbin Burnes, are they looking to get back immediate talent, or are they looking to then, I don't want to call it punt on the season, but towards the future?
It's a great question, because the Brewers, when you look at their roster and the NL Central in general, the Cardinals have gotten better. The Cubs are still pretty solid. But the Brewers, even without Woodruff, you should say they can still win the division.
Yeah.
They extended Jackson Chourio. They brought him up, and he's going to be an impact player from day one. I cannot wait to watch him play in the major league. So I do think the Brewers still believe, Anthony, that they can compete and win. So I would say if they're going to get a prospect package back, it's more likely to be guys who are at the major league level or very close AAA, AA prospect types who can help them in 24, as opposed to the total rebuild of 4 prospects from A-ball. This is a team, the Brewers, they believe they can still win, and this is part of the way that they operate their franchise. I'd also mention this, Willy Adames getting traded is also a possibility that they have considered and still are considering, as we are now just barely more than a month away from the start of spring training.
If there was one thing I thought I could guarantee at the beginning of the offseason this year, it was that Corbin Burnes was going to be dealt. And I saw him in Dodger blue. Then they pivoted to glass now, and they made the 2 huge acquisitions of the Japanese players. I'm not sure that's happening now. But if, in fact, Burnes is a Brewer on opening day, doesn't prevent the possibility from him being traded sometime before the deadline, because I think there were little bad feelings over the lost arbitration figure not too long ago, and that is, still out there, still potentially happening. Last on the list of pitchers that there's been a lot of trade conversation around, another former Cy Young Award winner, Shane Bieber. What's the latest there?
Very interesting case here as well. And of course, Shane is from the great state of California originally, so maybe some of those West Coast teams that we've been talking about could potentially get involved there with Bieber. I think one team, though, that stands out to me a lot would be the Chicago Cubs. And there's a connection there, of course. Carter Hawkins, the GM in Chicago, used to be in Cleveland, so he knows Shane and his story very, very well. The key thing with Bieber is that he was able to come back late in the season, Maddie, and show with 2 starts that he ended the year healthy, and that was huge for his value. There still may be the possibility for Cleveland that you bring him back to begin the season, and then depending on how things go in the AL Central this year, perhaps he becomes a really good deadline pickup. And I'm sure there are other teams that are saying to the Guardians, if you're so confident that he's healthy and is still a top-end pitcher, great. Have him be with you to begin the season. We'll circle back in June or July once he's shown and proven with 3 or 4 months of body of work that he's still an elite pitcher, and then he'll have a strong market. So there's a bit of a staring contest going on. Again, I think the Cubs are a good fit. I would get a little bit concerned from the Cubs' perspective. It's a rotation that does not miss a ton of bats already. And so with an already contact-oriented rotation, you might want to bring in someone who's going to miss bats a bit more than Bieber will, who's at this point in time maybe more of a pitch-to-contact type pitcher, doesn't quite have the 100-mile-an-hour fastball that you would have seen from someone like Glass now. So a lot of really interesting contours there for Bieber, but the key thing to me is I'm a believer in what he can bring, and I do think the fact that he ended the season healthy still keeps that possibility alive, Matt and Anthony, that we'll see a Bieber trade before the start of spring training.
Did I just hear that you're a believer? Is that what I heard? I just want to make sure.
I almost got tripped up. Bieber, believer, and I had to make sure that I spaced out my words there, Anthony. That was a good listen on your part. Well done, my friend.
He's got a couple of those, man. Eat your heart out, Harold. You're not the only one that can zing wordplay around on this set. JP Morosi with us on a Friday. JP, thanks. Good luck to Michigan this weekend. We had to say it for JP, who's waiting with bated breath for the national championship.
I'm a Penn State guy, so they can